I used to be afraid. I'd wake up in panic attacks. I'd fall asleep in unrest, wondering, where was I going with my life? What was my career? What was my calling? These things I had no idea, but I did know that all the greats had started young. Beethoven, Walt Whitman, Michael Jordan, you look at all the great athletes and writers and musicians, and they all started young. But here I was, 23 years old, and I didn't have a freaking clue. And so I agonized as I had for years. I fled from a future that I didn't want. I wrestled with the possibility of the unremarkable life of a white-collar salaryman, and it filled me with dread. If I could just find the path, then everything would be better. If I could just find my purpose, then I'd be happy. I'd be confident and secure in the knowing that I'd one day be great, and that all the misery and sacrifice would be worth it. This was a terribly unhealthy mindset. I kind of cringe when I look back on it. But after 8 years of soul-searching, unrelenting hard work, pushing myself to innovate and take the path less traveled, I regret none of it. And so reflecting now on storytelling, the North Star I found for not just my career, but for my entire life, I realized that so much of the success it's afforded me came down to answering a single question. Whether it was tripling my first consulting client's revenue in just 2 quarters, or landing my first head of marketing role at a tech startup, or receiving company-wide accolades for my all-hands presentation just 3 days after starting that role, I can trace it all back to an insight that I gained wrestling with a question that we all intuitively know the answer to, but can't quite put our fingers on, which is, just what the hell is a story anyways? I don't know a single person who wouldn't have at least one correct answer to this question. The problem is, how many of those correct answers would be different? Because there are many different ways to define the word story. All of those definitions are correct, all of them are related, and all of them are unique. In fact, Merriam-Webster has 10 unique definitions for the word story, not counting some of the more archaic uses. And while all of these definitions are true, not a single one of them captures story and what it is in its totality. How could a word that is so widely used and so widely understood not have a single definition that captures its true essence? I wanted to answer this question. I wanted to find that one definition. And so I set off in search of it. I read books on story structure. I also read books on psychology and neuroscience and design even. I watched a ton of philosophical discourse on YouTube and participated in discussions with thinkers and artists alike. And of course, I wrote. I tested the limits and use cases of story in virtually every area of my career and my life. And after some hundreds of story-breaking exercises and some tens of thousands of story words written, I finally came to the realization that stories are like computer programs inside our brains. They're like these little protocols that allow us to make meaning from our experiences. They encode patterns of behavior into our brains and can be shared from one person to the next. This makes it possible for another person's experiences to shape our behavior as if their experiences were our own. Which is crazy. No other animal can do this. Story is a uniquely human capacity. It brings us together. It allows us to coordinate at scale. It's given rise to tribes, and then nation states, and then empires, and then whole transnational systems of commerce and belief before finally giving rise to the global civilization we know today. It brings families and communities together. It allows us to experience deep, beautiful profundities far beyond the scope of our individual lives. It allows us to grow into better, more compassionate, more loving human beings. It also tears us apart. It's at the root of virtually all human-caused suffering. Competition, egoism, the willingness to put the desires of the self in front of the needs of others. It's story that enables these behaviors. It's story that allows us to shut off our empathy and close ourselves to, or even justify, the suffering of our fellow humans. And so it goes without saying that story is extremely powerful. It's at the root of so much human behavior. And so to understand it, to know how it might be used to better the world, became a passion of mine, an obsession even. And so with every book I read, and with every sentence I wrote, my prowess grew, and so did my career. But it wasn't until I learned and truly internalized the pattern that lies at the heart of every single compelling story that things really started to take off. This pattern is the 5-act story structure that transformed my career. It's a psychosomatic structure which connects the abstract concepts of the mind with the concrete sensations of the body. We call it the 5-act Shakespearean structure. It's as near to a universal story structure as we have. Virtually every single story I know, even those that predate Shakespeare, can be understood in terms of this structure. Classical mythology like Beowulf or the Odyssey, Hollywood blockbusters like Star Wars or Spider-Man, even TV series in each of their individual episodes like Breaking Bad or Rick and Morty can be best understood in terms of the 5-act Shakespearean structure. So how exactly does it work? Well, answering that question would take its own video, but I'll do my best to summarize. Act 1. The hero's ordinary life or status quo is disrupted by a paradigm shift, also known as a call to adventure or inciting incident. Act 2. This paradigm shift sets in motion a sequence of increasingly tense events until the hero is finally forced to leave their ordinary life behind in pursuit of some goal. Act 3. After crossing a threshold into a world of adventure, the hero faces a series of obstacles which test their resolve and introduce them to a new behavior or state of being. Usually, at around the midpoint of the story, the hero achieves a major victory before things start to unravel. Act 4. A catastrophic event puts the hero's entire journey into question. It is here, in a dark night of the soul, that the hero integrates the behavior they learned and uses it to propel them in a sequence of rising action towards the climax of the story. Act 5. The hero succeeds over the opposing force and then returns to their ordinary life forever transformed by the journey. Now, it's probably not obvious why this structure is so damn useful outside of writing novels or screenplays. So let me focus you on one key thing, which is that story is a tool for behavior change. If you can change someone's behavior, that's an extremely valuable skill. And whether you're trying to change the behavior of prospects, customers, employees, coworkers, bosses, friends, family, or anyone else, the 5-act structure is one of the most powerful ways to do it. If you want to learn how to use this structure, please watch my other video where I break it down in greater detail. And also, don't forget to hit subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. Much love and peace out.